Glass and the church. They form such a natural partnership in our minds. But it is not so widely known that it was here in Sunderland that the link between the men of God and the men of glass was first forged. The Venerable Bede, in his Historia Abbatum, tells of the coming to Wearside of glassmaking when Benedict Biscop summoned craftsmen from Gaul to glaze a new monastery and St. Peter's Church at Wearmouth in Sunderland in the year 674. According to Bede, the craft of glassmaking was unknown in England at that time, and Benedict Biscop's Gallic glassmakers not only glazed the windows as was asked of them, but they also instructed the English in their craft. And so began the tradition of pioneering glassmaking, still flourishing on Wearside today. Examples of 7th century glass can still be seen at St. Paul's Church and in the Bede Monastery Museum at Jarrow. In Sunderland, St. Peter's Church stands to this day, with the west wall and entrance porch surviving the ravages of time as testament to the skill of the Anglo-Saxon stonemasons. Glass windows in their churches undoubtedly made a tremendous impression on local worshippers, who were previously used to seeing church windows covered by shutters or oiled cloth. The significance of the coming of glass is echoed in the lore handed down through generations, that it was never dark in old Jarrow Church. Just how well Benedict Biscop's glassmakers instructed the Wearsiders in the art of glassmaking is open to question, since in 764 it's told that Cuthbert, abbot of Wearmouth, was forced to recruit glassmakers from Mainz in Germany. These workers, together with those from France and Italy, are recognized as having founded the medieval English glass industry. The major markets for medieval glass were either the church or the wealthiest classes of the laity. The church, embarking upon a massive construction program, demanded huge quantities of stained glass for the increasingly imposing and ornate chapels and cathedrals. The wealthy merchants and members of the aristocracy at that time lived mainly in or near London, and such was the expense of glass, they had their windows made in such a way that they could be transferred from home to home. In medieval times, transport links were poor and fragmented, so the glassmakers needed to be close both to their major market, London, and to a plentiful supply of wood for their furnaces. The medieval glass furnaces, then, were most plentiful in what are now the counties of Surrey and Sussex. Little is recorded of English glassmaking between medieval times and the end of the 16th century, when a fierce controversy arose concerning the depletion of the forest to feed the glass furnaces. But this wasn't an example of 16th century environmental concern. It was more a belief among the ruling classes that timber should be put to better use building ships for Britain's expanding navy. By 1611, the debate had escalated to such magnitude that King James VI and I felt obliged to take action. And so he granted a monopoly of glassmaking to a group of businessmen who had developed a way of using coal rather than wood to fire the glass furnaces. 4 years later, in 1615, the king took further action by banning the use of wood altogether as a fuel for glass furnaces. The most dominant name in English glassmaking at this time was Admiral Sir Robert Mansell. Mansell, keen to keep his works in London, experimented with Welsh and Nottinghamshire coal. However, high transportation costs forced him to relocate in Newcastle, where coal was plentiful and transportation cheap. By the time of the Civil War in the middle of the 17th century, the monopoly created by the Newcastle Guild of Glassmakers made it impossible for new glassworks to set up business in Newcastle. So, in the mid-1690s, a company of glassmakers was established in Sunderland, with 3 glassworks at Ayers Quay, Southwick and Bishop Wearmouth. The 18th century saw a tremendous expansion of the Sunderland glass industry as a demand for beer, wines and spirits, both in Britain and throughout the colonies, called for ever-increasing production of glass bottles. But Sunderland also manufactured window glass. The first crown glass was made on Wearside, and rolled sheet glass was developed and patented by James Hartley. Hartley's Weir Glassworks was reputed to be the largest in the world. The 19th century really was the golden age of Wearside glass. Bottleworks proliferated, huge quantities of window glass were manufactured, and some of the finest engraved and cut glass was crafted, such as the stunning Londonderry table service of 1824. The aptly titled Mystery Goblet was also produced during the early part of the 19th century, because mystery it is. Its intricate decoration, featuring the coats of arms of 8 powerful but often rival northeastern families, and why it was ever made, continues to pose a challenge to glass historians. By 1830, semi-automatic production techniques involving the pressing of semi-molten glass into metal molds dramatically reduced the price of glassware, enabling a much larger section of society to afford decorative glass artifacts. Sunderland glassmakers were quick to appreciate the commercial potential of this new development and produced millions of pieces, often resembling cut glass in a myriad of colours. The repeal of the Excise Act in 1845 and the Great Exhibition of 1851 provided the glass-making trade with a tremendous boost, and many of the industry's greatest names were established in Sunderland during this period. Names such as James Hartley, Henry Greener, White, Young and Tuer, and Matthew Turnbull. However, when the British government abolished import duty on glass in 1857, the home market was swamped by equally good but cheaper Belgian glass. This influx, coupled with the growth of other British glass centres, effectively ended the golden age of Sunderland glass. Glassworks after glassworks felt the chill wind of recession, and by 1877, only Hartleys, Turnbulls and Greeners remained in business. Hartley's, crushed by foreign competition, ceased trading in 1893. And 3 years later, the Weir Glassworks, once the world's largest, were demolished. The name of Hartley's was not lost to Sunderland glass manufacture, however, for in 1892, James Hartley Jr., grandson of the founder of the Weir Glassworks, established in partnership with Alfred Wood, Hartley Wood and Company, to manufacture specialized stained glass. That company, which has recently celebrated its centenary, is now the only remaining manufacturer of genuine antique English glass. The art of glass still has a home in Monk Wearmouth, where today Hartley Wood's Glassworks stands only a few hundred yards from St. Peter's Church, the site of the Monk Wearmouth Monastery, where our story began. Turnbulls continued to manufacture pressed glass tableware on Wearside well into the 20th century, mainly for the Woolworths chain. However, when the retail giant cancelled its contract in 1953, Turnbulls succumbed to the inevitable and closed down. But what about the other survivor, Greeners? Well, in 1885 it was taken over by James Ernest Jobling. But it was not until 1902, when his nephew, Ernest Jobling Purser, joined the firm, that Jobling's became an efficient, profitable manufacturing operation. Ironically, it was an American patented glass-making process which made Jobling's fortune. The company secured the UK license to manufacture Pyrex from its American inventor Corning in 1921, and in 1960 ceased manufacture of all other types of glass to concentrate effort on this miraculous heat-resistant material. Jobling's has now been taken over by Corning, and together with Hartley Wood is the only remaining large-scale manufacturer of glass on Wearside. The American connection was amplified during the 1980s, when, influenced by the US studio glass movement, the University of Sunderland established a course focusing on the art of glass. Until that time, teaching in glass had concentrated on design for industrial production. Today, the university offers a BA Honours Degree course which is developed into the most comprehensive of its kind in Europe, offering facilities for glass blowing, kiln forming and architectural glass. Several recent graduates have opened small studio workshops throughout the area, breathing new life into glassmaking on Wearside. The university's students have executed many prestigious and unique commissions, such as those for Northumbria Water, St Andrew's Church and Durham Cathedral.
When the work was drawing nigh completion, Benedict Biscop sent messages into Gaul to fetch makers of glass thence, that by a craft until then unknown in Britain, they might glaze the windows of the church, the cloisters and the refectory. Not only did they complete the work which was asked of them, but they also taught and instructed the English race in their skills.
Benedict Biscop's far-travelled glassmakers would be proud that their cherished skills have survived to this day. The glassmaker's craft is in safe hands on the banks of the Wear, as it has been for more than 1,300 years.